It's like it's the Force, and it's this kind of essence, and it's about balance, and the Jedi versus Sith, and like creating balance to the Force. Like it's more thematic than it is like a hard magic system. Across galaxies and imaginative realms, stories carry us beyond the ordinary. This is Reading Things and Writing Stuff, where we explore the craft of sci-fi and fantasy stories and uncover how legendary tales are built so you can forge your own. I'm Tim Fasciola, award-winning author of the Eventual Realm series, here to guide you through the art of storytelling. Welcome back to the next chapter of Reading Things and Writing Stuff. I'm Tim Fasciola, author of the Eventual Realm series. You know what I love? I'm so kidding. You know what I love? I freaking love magic systems. I love magic. I love tech. I love how it influences the stories that we tell. And it can be so memorable for what we read. Like there are, we're going to talk about the differences between a hard magic system, a soft magic system, and my buddy Entro. We're going to talk about hard magic systems. My buddy Baba. We're going to talk about hard magic systems. So just want to give you a little shout out. But we're going to talk about the differences between the benefits of each one, some examples of books and how they're utilized, and the impact that it can have not only on the story, but as an author branding mechanism as well. So I'm going to talk about magic. I write fantasy, but like tech is the same thing. Like we need to incorporate, like magic and technology can exist in the same rules. And stories that have magic also have tech, and stories that have tech may still have elements that are more soft science as opposed to magic, hard science versus soft science. So we can talk about this. I'm going to use them kind of interchangeably, so bear with me. But the reason why I love magic systems is because they can stand alone. They can stand completely on their own to be a hook for a story. So like some stories, like the world sells you, right? Like we've talked about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs and how that can influence a society's like focus and focal point. We've talked about religion and myth. We've talked about geography and climate. Like all of those things can be hooks in and of themselves. Magic's a big one. It's become a bigger one in recent years. And I think Sanderson has really popularized that. There's been this really heavy swing towards hard magic systems, and there's pros and cons to that. There's good and bad that comes with that, and we'll talk about that. And that might even be a whole episode dedicated to that and what that means. But for now, what is a hard magic system? What's a soft magic system? Why is it different? What is it? What do they do? So hard magic systems, they have rules. And because they have rules, the reader they're established for the reader. The reader understands what those rules are, how they can be used, what they can be used for, what they can't be used for. And therefore, magic can be used to solve problems. It just becomes a tool. Soft magic systems, the rules are more hand-wavy. They're not as concrete. They're more abstract. And therefore, if they are used to solve problems, it almost feels cheap. Feels convenient, feels contrived, feels whatever. It's like, all right, I guess we're doing this now. So if we want it depends what, like when selecting, do I want my magic system to have these elements or those elements? It's worth weighing how we're going to incorporate it. And they both have their pros and cons. So I mentioned hard magic system, rules for solving problems. Soft magic system, a little more hand-wavy. So the benefits of a hard magic system. Let's go through some examples. So Trader's Blade, soft magic system, some pretty strong elements of like what is hard. But with that being said, soft and hard magic exists on a spectrum. So when I say like this is soft, it doesn't mean that all elements are soft. It just means that most of it is. It might have some rules, but like they're not necessarily used to solve problems. That they're just like, these are the rules of the world. This is how it works. So Trader's Blade, Ashes of the Sun. This has two different magic systems in it, a lot of tech. We're going to dive into this one. This one's great. These are more soft. Again, still has some rules. One system is much more concrete and hard than the other, and the other is a little softer. But I've talked about this one already, Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn. This is the epitome of a hard magic system. We've also, haven't mentioned it yet, but the Stormlight Archive, super hard magic system, and another one of his Warbreaker, super hard magic system. And then the next one we're going to talk about is George R. R. Martin's Song of Ice and Fire, super soft magic system. So, what are the benefits? So, in a soft magic system, because it's less about the rules, because it's less about how and why things work the way they work, it allows for the magic itself to be more thematic. So I'll reference a TV show that if you are my age, you will hopefully have watched. But Avatar: The Last Airbender. This is a it's a kid's show, right? But it has so many story elements that really still resonate with adults. So even if you haven't watched and you're like, oh, should I want to? Like, yeah, there's a lot there for everyone. I didn't watch it as a kid. I'd known about it as a kid, but I really watched it as an adult, and I still loved it. It's become one of my favorite things to reference because of how well written it is. So if you're here for writing tips, it's a good one to reference. But if we look at Avatar: The Last Airbender, so there's some rules, right? So like waterbenders bend water, firebenders bend fire, earthbenders. So you got the idea. They bend the element that they can bend with, and the Avatar can harness all of the elements, and they can go into the Avatar state and connect with past avatars. Those are the rules of the world. Now, outside of that, what can be done with water bending? What can be done with fire bending? What can be done with earth bending? That's a little softer. That allows for a little bit more of, characters to kind of differentiate and express themselves differently through how their magic is used. And it's cool. But what it also provides is a landscape for more thematic development. So the concept, like one of the big themes, the concept of the Avatar is to bring balance to the world. So balance is one of these themes that in this motif that persists throughout the entire narrative of the series. So when we have a softer magic system, it allows for more thematic development, to really showcase this idea of balance, right? Now, in Trader's Blade, I had mentioned it earlier, like the saints walk among people. They are the living embodiment of people who demonstrate these virtues through deeds in their lives. So that's pretty concrete. But outside of that, what it can do, and that kind of what people can do with it kind of seems to kind of shift and evolve and be different for different characters. And it's cool, it's different, but it's overall a pretty low magic story, like a low fantasy story. Now, the tech, there's like this alchemical component, and the alchemy within the story, they just say it works, so it works. Now, it's established early on that, like, okay, there's the hard candy and there's the soft candy. And the hard candy is used for this; it can do this thing. The soft candies can be used for that thing, and it has this effect, right? So, is that magic? I mean, yes, technically it is. It is it or biology, whatever you want to call it. It is the elements not of our world that have a role in this world, and therefore they can play a role. Now, this story is primarily about fighting oppression, serving justice, and what the importance of law means and how that can be utilized for good. Also, how it can be leveraged for bad. So it's like it is a really interesting concept, but like the magic system is not heavily involved in it. So it has some rules, but it's pretty soft for the most part. Now, Ashes of the Sun, this next one, Django Wexler, and this is the Burning Blade and Silver Eye trilogy. Good, solid, really enjoyed book one, had some issues with the ending, was really curious about book two. Book two I thought was good, but it didn't necessarily improve on some of the things that I had issues with in book one. And then book three was not for me. I didn't think that it accomplished what I wanted it to accomplish. That being said, I think the magic system and the relationship dynamics that exist between the people who wield different magic systems in this world is fascinating. It's kind of inspired by Star Wars and this concept of the Force. And in Star Wars, like the Force and what it is and what it can do is definitely a softer magic system. And then there was the whole midichlorian thing. They tried to make it a hard magic system, and then it kind of like people were like, what the hell is going on? So it worked better as a soft magic system. It's like it's the Force, and it's this kind of essence, and it's about balance, and the Jedi versus Sith, and like creating balance to the Force. Like it's more thematic than it is like a hard magic system. Now, this, what I thought did really well is there's Dayet. Dayet is this kind of like energy of, the source of creation, like this force of creation. So, for some people, so Maya's character, Burning Blade, so she's given this cognomen because of how the Dayet works within her and her ability to channel it and whatnot. And that's really cool. And there's different people who can do different things, and their name and their magic is based off of how the energy of creation flows through them. It's cool, pretty soft. Like different people do different things, and it's kind of like it seems like it's made up on the spot. It's not necessarily solving problems. Now, there's also DACA. Now, DACA is kind of this like biological ghoul magic system that is like it can be used to create constructs and these like amalgamations of like beings. It's really like dark, and it's a really cool dichotomy we have between this light of creation that is very like from within, and then this DACA, which is more like sourced from without. Like you are taking something and making it into something else. Constructs, and there's alchemy, and there's all sorts of things within this story. And some is soft, some is hard, but it makes for a really interesting world, and it showcases the divide between these different factions. And I think that serves the story really well. The relationship dynamic is we have a brother and sister separated at a very young age. The sister that's taken from the brother then takes on like this like I want to avenge my family, and because like the sister's taken to this order to train her Dayet, and it's pretty cruel how she's torn from her family, and the family kind of falls apart without her. And so the brother wants revenge on the society for doing that, and he thinks he's going to save his sister. Meanwhile, his sister is been raised at this point by this system. She's part of it. She's moving on up in it. She doesn't want to be saved from it. And if anything, she looks at these kind of like rebels as part of the problem within the world. And that pits them against each other. And they're utilizing these different magics, and it works really well thematically. So again, on a spectrum, soft, hard, has elements of both. Both work really well for showcasing the themes within the story. So I think that is done very well in this book. I mentioned Brandon Sanderson. We can talk about all three of it. Like that, when I say that hard magic is really good at establishing a brand, Brandon Sanderson's the one that comes to mind. He's kind of really developed all of these different systems, how they influence the world. They're super imaginative. There's a lot of rules. Like there's a compendium in the back of the book to explain the different orders of the Knights Radiant. There's like the different metals and what each one does within Mistborn, and in Warbreaker you can like draw breath and color from thing to like create constructs and make things act on a will that you can bind. It's like really imaginative systems, lots of rules. So those rules can then be used to solve problems, because it's not like, well, where did that come from? Like we understand this is a tool in the toolbox now. This exists in the world and it can do these things. And so these stories, because of the hard magic systems, like that's become his thing. He's the guy, he's the magic system guy. And if you want that to be your thing, you can do that. But that's what it takes. It's often like these very intricate, and like once again, I'm talking, it exists on a spectrum. You can have something that doesn't quite go all the way over here. But if we look at like soft magic system, hard magic system, Brandon Sanderson's all the way over here, hard magic system. And then we have like The Name of the Wind, the Kingkiller Chronicle by Patrick Rothfuss. And there is like almost a science to how magic works. And this is explored in the school through Kavoth's perspective. But that's the hard magic system. But then there's like, what is The Name of the Wind? What is this element? And how does this work? And the Chandrian, and like there's plenty of elements of softer magic that are more mystical. Now, will that series ever get finished? Who knows? We'll put that up there with our next book that we're going to talk about. That a book that who knows if it'll ever get finished. Game of Thrones, Song of Ice and Fire. So in this story, right, the magic is for the most part very soft. the politics and the characterization really drives the story. That is kind of the brand more so than like, oh, the magic's like, there's different types of magic. Don't get me wrong, but none of them, and they each have their own rules, but they're not necessarily going to be like the selling point of the series. So like, okay, there's like the ability to warp. The Stark children have the ability to literally see through the eyes of their direwolves. And while that's really cool, yeah, that's all it is. It ends there. And there's other people who can, warg it to different things, their connection with the animal, the hunters and trackers who can like use a literal bird like an eagle to kind of see from high ground. Like it's cool versus like the R'hllor and the red priests and priestesses and the Lord of Light. Like there's just, you can see things in the fire. Great. How does it work? Why does it work that way? No one knows. And it doesn't matter. No one cares because it's not what this story centers upon. Where do dragons come from? How do they do this? How do they do that? I don't know. Why are, the Targaryens, the blood of the dragon, how come, Daenerys can't be burnt? Because she's, the blood of the dragon. What does that mean? That's what it means. Because she's, her family's from old Valyria and they have this old blood and I'm okay. And you just accept it. It's kind of a softer aspect of the magic system. It doesn't need a whole lot more explanation than that. Now, different stories, different magic, different elements that can be incorporated and to do different things. Now, again, I want to reiterate that they exist on a spectrum. Some elements are going to be hard. Some are going to be explained. If you're going to be utilizing it to solve problems, it needs to be established beforehand. That is an example of hard. Softer magic systems, a little more hand-wavy, and it's going to generally have more thematic benefits. Now, like this spectrum runs the full gauntlet, and when you have different systems within the same world, they can be at different places on this spectrum, and that's okay. The big thing is just finding something and making it serve your world. Once you introduce magic or technology into a civilization, it changes everything, right? So if you have people who literally just make fire out of nothing, right? And they can make fire and it doesn't need something to consume. You can just like it perma burns, right? Why are people gathering wood? Why is this guy chopping wood? Like, you see what I mean? Like, that's not going to be a thing. It's not going to be a focal point. They can just do this thing, and it'll sustain itself. And the biggest thing with magic is not the abilities. It's not what you can do with magic. It's the limitations. It's the drawbacks. That's what fascinates me most about a magic system. I want magic to come at a cost. And sometimes that cost is like, referencing Aang in Avatar Last Airbender. He just has to train these different things. He can do all four. He can harness all four elements, but he needs to train them. And what does that look like? And what does that interconnect with? And it's soft, but it serves the story. This is also a children's TV show, you know what I mean? So the more complex, the more complicated, the more rules, it does kind of move the audience integration to the right. What I mean by audience integration is like the learning curve. What is the baseline that someone can come in and just understand? How long do I have to explain to you how this thing works? Some people can bend fire, some can bend water, some can bend earth, some can harness the wind. That's the magic. Okay, cool. Well, in the Knights Radiant, so there's the Knights Radiant in the Stormlight archive. So there's this thing called Stormlight, and you can utilize Stormlight, and if you declare these oaths, and then you can do this thing, and depending on which oaths you swear, you harness the powers from these spren, and these spren are from these gods, and these gods are. I'm going to be here for a while. You need a compendium to get through this. So if you understand that different magic systems are going to have different learning curves, and different learning curves for different stories may or may not serve said story. And you have to know your audience. And that's the biggest thing with storytelling. It's like, know your audience. Who are you trying to write for? If you write for everyone, you're writing for no one. Now, often what I tell people is write the story for one person. And that one person should be you. especially when you're starting out, should be you. Who are you writing for? Should be you. If this is your first time telling a story, writing a story, write for you. Write about the things that you care about. Write about the things you're passionate about. But in regards to, understanding the audience integration and genre expectations and incorporating them all together and putting forth a product that is digestible, provides escape, allows for entertainment, creates a capacity for connection, establishes teaching moments, or maybe even challenges your reader. Wherever you want to be on that ladder of creative responsibility, that is up to you. But understand that it is going to provide each layer creates a gateway that some people will be able to walk through and others won't. What I mean by gateways and audience integration, this combination of what is the market appeal? And some people will write for market and other people will write for, what they're passionate about. And sometimes those things overlap. Like right now, romantasy is the big thing that's selling. Lit RPG, big thing that's selling. Does that mean you have to write that? No, of course not. Write what you're passionate about. If you try to force yourself into a genre or a trope that you don't like, you're probably not going to do it well. And there's not going to be a market for it anyway. So write what you're passionate about, because market trends change. They come back around. The beauty of stories is like, these are going to be here for a while. These have been here for a while. This was published in 1996. You know what I mean? Like, if it came back around when the show started in 2010-ish, 2008, 2009, whatever, 2011, something in there. It all blends together. Time is irrelevant. It's a construct. But point is that if you're writing for market, you might miss that market. But if you're writing what you're passionate about, if you're telling the story you want to tell, that'll always be for that audience of one, because the market will come back around. But understand that if you're writing a story that has a very niche market, has a super steep audience integration, a super steep learning curve, it's not going to be for everyone. And therefore, you shouldn't market it that way. Once again, most stories shouldn't be written for everyone. And this is more movies, but the concept of 4-quadrant marketing. You have, can mom watch it? Can dad watch it? Can the kids watch it? Can the whole family watch it together? Those are the 4 quadrants. And can you hit all 4 quadrants? Stories like Harry Potter got sensationalized because they could hit all 4 quadrants. Everyone could read and enjoy it. And so keep that in mind when you're storytelling. So like if you have a really complex magic system and you also have a ton of characters, and you also have a ton of different worlds and a ton of different languages and a ton of different belief systems and god systems and blah 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 blah, each one of those things layered on top of itself, layered on top of each other, steepens that audience integration, minimizes the potential market. Go into it understanding that. So sometimes if you have a really complex world, lots of characters, the politics takes center stage. Do you need a complex magic system? Do you want a complex magic system? If you have a simpler, this is a heist story that could you tell this story without the magic system being what it is? Sure. Would it be sensationalized the way it has been? No. This story leans on its magic system more so. Like, yeah, I think some of the characters are really cool and dynamic and great. Some of the storylines are really solid, but what makes a story is the magic system. So like understanding and knowing what serves your story is really important. Now, in my own stories in Eventual Realm, like the big thing, and Sanderson says this because he teaches courses at BYU, and his rules of magic is like, before you add something new, build upon what you have. And that like was always something that resonated with me, because I like systems, I like structure, I like organization, I like things to kind of fit together and have cohesiveness and cohesion, blah blah blah. So in Eventual Realm, all the magic is derived from the gods and kind of given to the humans. So like, even though there's a lot of different magic systems, there's an elemental magic system. There is like a force and manipulation magic system that's almost like Jedi mind control type of, in the sense of like levitate. I'm going to levitate that thing over there, like a telekinesis, more not a, what did I say? More telekinetic than mind control. And then there's a healing magic, and then there's a blood magic, and like then there's this like light magic, shadow magic. Like there's all these different magic systems. So it's like, well, that's too many. That's a lot. That's over the top. Well, what unifies them? What rules do they exist on? They're all bound by the scales of balance. So for each thing, there is a cost. For if I want to create fire, there's rules. How did I acquire that? It was indirect contact through the gods. Great. Now the character has the capacity. That doesn't mean they have the control. Control can be trained, but there is an affinity towards it. Their ability to balance the scales, and that's more of a soft element. What makes someone able to balance the scales? It's softer. But what are the rules? You have to have come into contact with this thing, and then you've needed to learn and channel in this way. But another rule is if I want to create fire, this is hot, it's going to have a chilling effect on my body. And that is extremely, if I create a lot of fire all at once, if I'm ineffective at balancing the scales, the way that rebalancing impacts me, I could like literally go into hypothermia and like, Now, if creating water, same idea. My body's going to heat up. This is cold and hot. Now, the elemental magic is all physically balancing the scales, whereas like the light and the shadow and time and space manipulation magics, those are more mental, and they show themselves more in Arcadia's story, which is Boon Blessed, which hasn't come out yet, but now you know. That's more like, if you create and cast shadow magic, it still has an effect on the person conjuring. With shadow magic, it kind of like brings up despondency, like memories of depressive and can create despondency. It's more of a mental reflection as opposed to a physical reflection. And so like, healing magic, if one is to heal, they're going to have to accept like the pain of that, what that person went through, what they're trying to heal. So like there's this equal and opposite effect. And those who are good at balancing the scales, it's not like tenfold. You know what I mean? If you're poor at balancing the scales, okay, I want to heal this paper cut. It's going to feel like I have my hand cut off if I'm poor. Whereas if I'm good, it might just be like, oh, I felt like I may have almost had a paper cut. I feel it's not as impactful because I have tipped it in my favor or against my favor, and then I let it balance back out. And the really skilled technicians who, can do like, okay, I'm going to cast fire magic. I'm going to let that make my body cold, but then I'm going to immediately cast that water magic. And now, because I'm already cold and this is going to heat me up, I can do that for longer. And like the people who are good at balancing the scales can utilize this. Now, balancing the scales is like the scales are also the symbol of one of the religions. And one of the themes throughout the story is, like an eye for an eye. Like, we must have justice. We must have retribution. Like, and a vengeful realm is the story of mercy, like being able to not fall for the fall into the trap that vengeance is, that retribution is. An eye for an eye and the world goes blind, right? So everything is built upon itself. The magic system comes from the gods. The gods have, some of them are corrupt, some of them are not. And, this creates this need for balance in the world, and who's going to bring that balance, and the magic that person wields. They need to experience that interpersonally, but also intrapersonally. And that was what I wanted to create. And that's what magic systems that are well fleshed out and kind of integrative can allow for, as opposed to, oh, they just have fire magic because, like, you know what I mean? Like, that's cool. But is it just there because you've seen that as a trope in other things? And you're just like, okay, I want that. Maybe your story isn't about magic. Maybe you have something, the concept of like in Finding Nemo, right? Like there's different, narrative ways of analyzing stories to see like, do they include these elements? So like the concept of the Bechdel test, I promise I'll bring this back. The Bechdel test is to assess from a feminist approach, like, does this story pass these three rules? And the three rules are there like two female characters? Do those two female characters talk to each other and move the plot forward two times? And when they talk to each other, do they talk about something other than a man? Like, those are the three rules. And the number of stories that don't pass the Bechdel test are insane. But like, take a story like Finding Nemo. It's a father's search for his missing son. It doesn't pass the Bechdel test. Is that okay? Yes. because it's about a father looking for a son. That's what it's meant for. That was what it was intended for. So as it relates to your magic system, understand what is at the heart of the story you're trying to tell. And if you understand that heart, that through line, what helps you better tell that story? That's what it's all about. But once magic enters the world, it changes everything. So if you've done world building already, if you have looked at your, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and this is where this society's at, and this is where that society's at, and you've done like, geography and climate and all these things and seen how they influence, and you've looked at religion and myth, and well, once magic enters the world, it needs to integrate into all of that, especially if magic is going to be used to solve problems in your world. So understand that, find the layers, find what works, and make it serve your story for your audience. But man, do I love magic. Thank you for joining this chapter of Reading Things and Writing Stuff. Turn the page, and I look forward to seeing you next time.